This is Sportish.
Do it better.
This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish.
This is Sportish for one last time in the month of August. Thank God. Hopefully soon we'll have things to talk about. He's Dr. Keith Strudler, Director of the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. And my name is Geoff Brault. Keith, they call it the dog days of summer. And I think here on Sportish, we are feeling that because, again, this feels like episode 10, I don't know, maybe episode 70. I can't keep track of us just not having anything good to talk about. We need more stuff to start happening because I can't do this much longer.
Oh, I think we can fill the air. I'm not concerned about that. Are you concerned? I mean, I have a lot of things to talk about. I have a lot of things to get off my chest.
I guess I'm not so concerned that we can't fill time, is that we can't fill time with anything interesting. And the people at home who let's be honest, Keith, they come to us for a certain type of thought and a certain kind of programming. And I feel like if we can't deliver that to them, we don't have a lot of rope, right? There's only so many people we could lose before we're truly shouting into the void.
And I understand. And look, I mean, a lot of people now are off watching White Lotus. Great show.
Yep. So again, most people have already finished White Lotus.
Yeah.
This is
you know how I like to
now.
Do this.
Yeah.
I like to do it my own pace. My own pace. I just finished WandaVision. How about that? How about that ending? No spoiler alert there. I really was like, why am I watching The Honeymooners? And then I figured out it's not like there's a show behind it. So I'm catching up a little bit. And tonight, of course, as you know, which is, an important thing for me, we're going to watch in Ridgewood where they do, in fact, give out free Ben & Jerry's. I'll be watching Tootsie. So that's going to be on. The Dustin Hoffman movie.
Yeah, I know what Tootsie is. You're watching this on For the Fans, maybe, ftfnext.com.
Yeah.
Possibly, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. We thank you for joining us. You can find every episode of this show once a week, Thursday-ish, on one of those platforms. And this is what I like about our show. It's like a Russian, I guess it's wrong to call it a Russian roulette, although it kind of is. I mean, I guess you pick your channel, and if you guess right, you survive another week. It's like a game of chance, right? Like the Punch It game on The Price is Right to figure out when and on what platform you will be able to access each week's episode. Not enough shows do that. Most shows are like, oh, we're going to make it so easy for you to discover the content. We like to zig where others zag. So if you found this, we're very proud of you, and tweet at us and tell us how.
Yeah. So we like a discerning audience. We don't, again, I think people have it too easy these days. People have it a little bit too easy. This is the uphill both ways in the snow program. And by the way, I saw a promotion today, apropos of nothing, that it's the Houston Dynamo, their professional, their MLS team. They have the 713, which is the area code, $7 tickets, $1 hot dogs, $3 beers. What is the best value of that? So wow. $11 gets you dinner and a show. I mean, that's not, what's the best value of that?
So that value to whom? Value to the, like, value in terms of money making for the team, or value in terms for the person?
No. Well, look, money making to the team, it will always be whatever the beers are, because people will drink. There's the hot dogs, unless you're Joey Chestnut, the hot dog, there's a cap, a hard cap on the hot dog. What would you say the cap is on enjoyment for hot dogs? Is it $2?
Like dollar enjoyment?
No, I'm just saying, I'm saying how many hot dogs
how many?
Can you eat and still enjoy them? Not how many can you eat?
Yeah, 2. I mean, maybe 3 if you're a person who's very voracious.
So the answer is the utility value of a hot dog. We talked about this with donuts a lot. The third hot dog you're saying is worth way less than the second hot dog. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Well, and it's not only the hot dog, it's the bun. That's a lot of bread.
But of those 3, if they're like, hey, as a consumer, what's your best deal? Is it the $7 ticket to the MLS game? Is it the $1 hot dog, or is it the $3 beer?
It's the $3 beer.
I think you're right, just because they overprice beers so much at sporting events that like, that's the one place where people go, they're like $12 beer. That seems reasonable. Like and they keep doing it. So I tend to agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, it's because, beers cost more out in the world because drinking at home could mean you have a problem, right? Like if you're just sitting around in your house, yes, you could drink a beer for less than $3, but the problem is you're sitting around in your house. So most people want to get out into the world and have their beers. And so that's why there's a premium on these, whether you're at a bar, whether you're at a sporting event, whatever. And so if you can get a beer in public, in a place where no one's going to judge you for having 2, 4, 10, 12, and you can get those for $3 each, that's obviously going to be your win. It's not even close.
That is what other things are more valuable in the wild than in your house? Because there's some things now that we like more in our house, right? There's some things that are more expensive, like a doctor's visit, more expensive in your home than it would be in the wild, right? Where you have to go on their terms, right? So there's some things when you have it done, personal training, someone comes to your house and they train you. That's a service. And it seems like services certainly tend to be a little bit more, expensive when they're done in your home. There's some things, as you suggest, they're more expensive when they're done in a social setting.
I mean, basically any kind of food and drink, right? I mean, no matter where you're going, if you're eating out, you're paying more than you would pay if you had that same product.
Not a personal chef coming to your house. If you could have Bobby Flay walk into your house and cook for you, that would be more expensive than going to Bobby Flay's restaurant.
Well, sure, but that's not what we're talking about. First of all, when you go to Bobby Flay's restaurant, he's not cooking for you. So yes, that is definitely going to be a more expensive situation.
So you're telling me the only way I can get Bobby Flay to cook for me is to be a contestant on one of his shows or a judge on one of his shows? That's the only way I'm eating Bobby Flay's food?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, you realize Bobby Flay's got a bunch of restaurants. You think he's in every one? You think he's like Santa Claus going from time zone to cook at every one of his restaurants?
You got me thinking about the Olive Garden and the TGI Fridays in Times Square. For some reason, that got me to there. I don't know why. Hey, I know a place.
I don't want you there anymore. So we need to get you out of that headspace. There is a little sports talk coming. Forbes released a list of the highest paid women's athletes, and it's an awfully interesting list once you get out of the top 2. And we're going to talk a little bit about college football conferences banding together in the face of the big bad SEC. Plus, there's something we love on this show. Something we love, and it is meaningless streaks. We love meaningless streaks, and there's a great one going on in the NFL right now. But we need to begin with a hypothetical. Keith Strudler, let's say that you're on vacation with your family and you're in France, just for argument's sake. The European country you're in does not matter, but for the sake of argument, we're going to say you're in France.
What part of France? Am I in the Bordeaux region? Am I in Paris? Am I in Nice? Am I on the beach?
You're in Nice, I think is a great, that's good. You got the beaches there. You're close to Monte Carlo, but I think Nice is the perfect area for this hypothetical. So you're in Nice, the south of France, you and your whole family, right? And it's the first day. You just landed in Nice. And you're out, you're having a great day. And
so I've gotten off because you land in the morning. So I've got the whole day ahead of me and I've got to try to stay that whole deal.
You got the whole day ahead of you and you're having a nice family day. Let's say you went to the beach. Say you went to the beach in Nice on your first
day. Excuse me, La Plage. We went to La Plage.
And so while you're there enjoying the sun or Le Soleil, is this where we're just going to stop and say the 1 or 2 French words that we know whenever we happen to come across one of those words in the English sentence? So you and your family are enjoying the beach.
Je m'appelle Keith.
So you and your family are enjoying the beach and you're having a great day out. And, as sometimes happens at a beach day, maybe you wander off for, a nice snack, right? An Aperol Spritz. Who knows? You wander away.
A crepe. I go for a crepe.
Yeah, you go to the pâtisserie and you get a nice crepe. So when you go off and you get your snack, you come back to your beach site and your family is gone. Your family is gone. And you forgot, Keith Strudler, to activate the international plan on your cell phone. So you have no way of reaching them. And so you think, maybe they wandered off and went, to get a crepe of their own, or they saw an ice cream cart or whatever. Maybe I'm in the wrong spot. And you start to think, all right, I guess nothing's wrong. And you wait and you're waiting, but you start waiting an uncomfortable amount of time. Something doesn't feel right to you. And so you have to contact the authorities and you put in a missing persons request. You say, my entire family is gone. I can't find them. And the police take this very seriously because they know that there's been a rash of disappearing tourists in Nice, France. So they're like, aha, We have heard of scenarios like this. This is very serious.
It's
We're
actually,
immediately...
I feel like this is the time when the Pink Panther gets involved.
And underscoring the seriousness of the situation, they're calling. I have a
series. I have, by the way, a series of stories. One of them that I will have to tell now that you've offered this hypothetical in France. One of them involves me and a good friend of mine ending up at a police station after drinking what we believe to be a quart and a half each of X-Lax. Continue.
Well, stay tuned for that, everybody. But we have to finish this hypothetical, which ends in a very, very interesting question. So you're with the police now for hours. I mean, day has turned into night and night has turned into late night. And you're very worried at this point. And you're searching until maybe 2 a.m. and you have no signs. And the police say, all right, listen.
All of 3 of them are gone.
Gone. You can't get in contact with them. You don't know what's happening. The police have escalated this situation in your mind. And now you don't know up from down or left from right. You're in
Am I a suspect at this point?
No, you are not. You are not a suspect. And the police yet. Then the police say around 2 a.m, Keith, they go, listen, Mr. Strudler, there is nothing more that we can do tonight. We need you to just go to the hotel, get some sleep, and be back here in the morning. When you go back to your hotel room, do you brush your teeth?
That's a lot of setup for that. So I have a terrible answer for this. And then I have a terrible answer. The terrible answer is, and my dentists know this, I rarely brush my teeth before I go to bed.
That's insane. You're a once-a-day brusher? I mean, this hypothetical is worth its weight in gold just to learn that. You're a once-a-day brusher?
I'm not proud of it. I've always wanted to be a twice-a-day brusher, and I fall asleep. And so I miss out on the opportunity to get what most would suggest is the more important toothbrushing opportunity, which is your evening, where you flush away all the badness that you've done throughout the day. I get the morning, which is great for fresh breath, not as strong for the hygienic. This is why I have such dental issues. So I often fall asleep on the couch or something, or just I get real tired and I just blow it off. So my answer would be, now there's a little confounding issue here, which is I've probably taken an overnight flight to Europe. I may be on a 48-hour banger of just craziness, dental craziness. And I'm talking airplane food. I'm talking about French candy. I'm talking about God knows what kind of fluids I put in my mouth when I got over there, right? And so who knows what kind of parties happening in the bicuspid. So that's a great question. I thought you were going to ask me a question like, when I get home, do I watch TV? Like, do I watch a game?
Do you go through what, for most people, apparently not for you, is their most basic nighttime routine?
Yeah. I don't have a nighttime routine. My nighttime routine
sounds like it.
It's just watch whatever TV I'm watching and then wake up and be like, where am I? Mommy?
So no, then you would not brush your teeth. But not because your family was or wasn't missing, just because you would never brush your teeth at night, which is a wild and unexpected answer to this question.
I have spent some time at a French police station, though. I'll tell you that. So,
is this the X-Lax story?
Yeah. So this is what happened.
Bring it on. Yep.
Here's what happened. And I know there's a lot of sports stuff to get to, and a very tragic situation in an Alabama household.
Yes.
So, as people are wont to do, we went backpacking after I graduated from college. So a good friend of mine, we got the tickets to go over there. And this is long before your cell phone era where everything was available. So we had the guidebooks and the whatever. We went to the American Express office and we got traveler's checks, and we're over there and we're backpacking, sleeping in these awful hostels. And I'm using my limited French. And we get to France, and we're spending like our last day. We've checked out of our hostel or wherever we were, and we're just spending the day in Paris before we get on a train to go to wherever was next. I feel like it was Amsterdam, right? A coveted spot, obviously. So we're there in France, and we're sitting there, and we put our stuff in a train station locker. These lockers that are supposed to be steel fortresses. You put your money in, they lock up, and we leave it there for the day. And this is what you do. And all your stuff's in your backpack. So we go spend the day in Paris. And at some point in the afternoon, we really have nothing to do. And as exciting as backpacking is, newsflash, it ain't, because you run it. You're just sitting there and you're just hanging out in a foreign country. Same thing you do in America, by the way. So we go and we walk into a store and there's this drink called Chocomel. And I see this and I'm like, hey, that's Chocomel. That looks great. I bet it's a lot like you. So we get like a quart and we split it, right? We split a quart of Chocomel and it tastes delicious. It's chocolatey. It's creamy. My French is limited. We split it. We're like, that's delicious. So then we each got our own another quart. And we down it. And we both then we walk around. We're like, well, we don't have that much time left. So then we go back to the train station and both of us are starting to experience some gastrointestinal duress. Neither of us are feeling good. And by the way, at this point, we're also going into places where we have to pay to use the toilets because that's the way it was back then. So we have made now 1 or 2 trips to the facilities because our stomachs are not agreeing with what's just happened. And so then we get to the train station. And as it turns out, I get my backpack and I go over to my friend's place and his locker is just wide open and he's just staring at it. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, it's not here. And I go, what's not here? He's like, my bag. So now we don't have a bag. He's got nothing. This is day 4 into our 30-day trip in Europe. So I'm like, well, we're going to have to go. We're just going to get on the train. He's like, I will not leave Paris without reporting this theft. So we
I respect that.
Oh, he
Correct.
did very much. And I was like, they don't care. We're American spoiled tourists. They don't care. He's like,
it's the principle of the thing. I do not rush.
So we went to the police station and we had to fill out. We sat with these French police, and halfway through, I'm like, look, I have to get to your toilet. So I did that, came back. He finished filing the reports. They said they'd contact us as soon as they found anything out. And we left on our way to Amsterdam. And then we stopped at a department store as soon as we got to Amsterdam, at which point he bought a tennis bag and 2 white T-shirts and a leopard skin Speedo, which he wore for the duration of the trip. I could also then tell you about the situation I developed, which is an unfortunate and severe case of jock itch, which led us to a pharmacy in Amsterdam, which went even worse than that trip.
Sure. Bathroom in French, salle de bain. Salle de bain, bathroom in French. And while we're on the topic of crucial police work, in the American country of Alabama this week, there was perhaps the most sportish story that's ever been recorded in national media. An Alabama man was in bed with his wife, and they had, I think, a moment that most couples have had. Someone heard a noise. And when you hear a noise and you're in bed with your spouse, someone has to get up and go check. He's struggling in your relationship. Which person is that?
Not it.
You
hope it goes away.
Someone has to go check the noise.
Yeah.
And so the gentleman went to check the noise. And again, we mentioned this is Alabama. So he, of course, grabbed his handgun to go and inspect.
I assume he was sleeping. It must have been on his person at that point.
So he grabs the gun.
You can sleep naked, but you never let the handgun go. Like that's how I imagine him sleeping with nothing but a holster.
The Alabama pajamas, of course. So he's creeping downstairs in the dark with his gun at the ready. And for one of the rare times, there was another person in the house.
This was not a drill.
Also, by the way, again, as mentioned, Alabama, who also had a gun. And they had a little Mexican standoff. They fired at each other.
That's amazing. They both hit the target, which never happens.
Never happens. It's like the rare double knockout in boxing.
It's the end of Rocky III.
So both of these people, the man who lives in the house with his wife and the other person, shot each other. So at this point, the police are going to get involved. And they did. And you might think that this would be a very simple story of a man protecting his house from a home invader. Au contraire, mon frère. The second man was the wife's boyfriend, who she was letting live in the house in secret.
Yes.
While the husband was still in the house. She was cheating on the husband with this other guy who she let live in the house. And then the husband shoots the boyfriend. And here's the kicker. When the police try to get to the bottom of this situation, the woman was too intoxicated
My favorite
to be
part.
interviewed by the police. And how did the police figure out that this man had been in the house for a long time, that he had almost established squatters' rights in the spare room? There were many, quote, many bottles of urine that would signify that this gentleman had been inside the house for quite some time. So, Keith Strudler, we don't have a resolution to this story. We know that there are no heroes. We know that really the only victim is the male police, who lives in the house.
The police are the heroes here. The police are the heroes. Do you think they went back to the station? They're like, gentlemen, we've seen some strange things in our time. We've seen crocodiles. We've seen tigers. We've never seen anything quite like this. Is this like one of those CSI files that they're like, this one goes down?
I mean, there is no one outside of perhaps the husband who lived in the house, whose house it was, whose thought process you can understand here. If you're the wife and you're having the affair, what triggers you to say, yes, you can live in my house?
Convenience.
But then if you're the man who knows that you're having an affair,
yep,
why do you want to stay in this house?
I mean, look, I'm not going to get too into this because I've clearly never been in this situation in any regards, unless, of course, and I can only, unless there is another man living in this house. It's a big house. You know, it's a big house, but I probably shouldn't lay all my cards out on the table. I don't have a gun and I certainly don't sleep with it. So I'm a little defenseless. Like I'd come down with like a fly swatter, something like that. Like I'm one of those people, like when they have to go downstairs because they think that, like, I grab the thing. It's always in a comedy, right? They grab the thing that's closest to them and it's always something highly inappropriate, like as a weapon. So, right. So I'd have like a calculator, so a remote control. And so, the people that I have heard that I may have even known that have been in a situation where they may have been improprieties, shall we say, they tend to be very cautious about their whereabouts, burner phones. Like, and by the way, the only reason, because it all unravels at the end, right? And then there's a moment when everything unravels and their life is ruined. Why would you have a theory? Why? And by the way, here's my other thought on this. That urine is going to start to smell it. Like, wouldn't there be I mean, I got a cat, someone's like, cat peed on the couch, like something happened, like, wouldn't you want, talking about covering your tracks, why would you want to do that? And by the way, is this house so big that the guy never walks into the spare room that, by the way, is leaking urine smell like ammonia into the hallway? What's going on in this house?
So you have touched on my theory of how this happened. And that is that, and again, I've never had an affair, but from what I
have an affair because I've never had a relationship.
Exactly. Welcome to how I've structured my life to avoid potential pitfalls like this one. I assume that what's exciting about it is the intrigue, is the knowing that you're doing something wrong, is the sneaking around and sort of the little miniature James Bond movie that you've concocted for yourself.
Otherwise, it's just a relationship. Right.
Exactly right. Otherwise, you realize that old, Henry from accounting ain't that interesting either. So I think that this woman, who again was too intoxicated to speak to the police when both her husband and boyfriend shot each other in her living room.
And she really is. She's the only she's the most important witness. I mean, she's the most important person she probably has the answers.
Also the worst person in the whole story. I mean, she's terrible. I assume that she just took that to another level where she's like, what's even more exciting than having an affair and sneaking him into my house where he can live. And let's find out how long it takes for my husband and my gentleman lover to duel over the kitchen counter.
I'm amazed that they both shot each other. Now, by the way, did anyone ask them if they are Auburn or Bama fans? I figure that had to have come up. We should get Andy Billings on. Was there a roll tide in all this? Like, how about if this would have been the one thing that they see each other, they got their guns pointed, and one guy goes, roll tide, and the other guy goes, roll tide, and they drop the weapons. That's what they should have done to diffuse this situation. Because while I imagine at that particular moment, the husband was probably enraged, right? Enraged. The one thing that could have brought them together, right? Despite the conflict over the object of their affections, would have been their love for the Crimson Tide.
For college football. Well, college football does have a way of bringing apparent adversaries together. And we saw that this week as the ACC, Pac-12, and Big Ten. Once again, poor Big 12. They have just been getting kicked in the teeth this entire offseason.
Can we call them what they are? They are the Big Eight. Can we at least call them what they are? It's comical. It was one thing when they were the Big 12, when they were 10, because you could say, well, there's already a Big 10. Now they're 8. And nothing that big about any of them. Is it not time? Can we change? Like, that is the worst brand. This has now gotten to the point where you call a big guy or a little guy, a big guy tiny. Like, we've gotten to that situation now. It's comical.
Well, we don't need to talk any more about the Big 12 because they are wholly irrelevant in this coalition against the SEC. The ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big Ten have formed a coalition against the big bad SEC, which is, adding Oklahoma and Texas and primed to take over the college football landscape. That's left the other 3 conferences and what we're now going to call the Power 4, sorry, Big 12, the other 3 conferences scrambling. So they set up, Keith, a coalition. And that's all that we can say about it because no one has any idea what this actually is. Is any of this going to matter, or are we now living in a world where the SEC is NFL light and everyone else in college football is relegated to a 3rd class?
Well, I think some of that's going to be answered by what Clemson and Florida State decide to do, because they have been eyeing the next 2 spots in that conference for quite some time. And by the way, if Clemson doesn't look like an SEC school, I don't know what does. Like, I don't know what does. They have, I guarantee you they have taken up all the ethos that LSU and Alabama and Auburn have. Like, they, whatever anti-mask mandate they have, it's just as strong. Like, they're all in. So it is, I will say there were a couple of interesting things that came out of this. And one, it is kind of amazing how much it's become everyone. This is like Tiger against the field now. Like, everyone has decided we got to stop the SEC one way or another, even though that still is their meal ticket. Like, the SEC is what has made college football in many ways. It also now has become, this is like when a superhero becomes ever so slightly too powerful. They've gotten a little bit too powerful. This is like when the robots take over, someone has to remember how to turn it off. So what was interesting was when the commissioners of the ACC and the Big Ten and the Pac-12 got together, the things that they talked about, which were almost kind of stabs at what the SEC, what they perceive the SEC. They were like, well, we're so glad we got conferences together that care about research and academics and going to class. Like, they talked a lot about their shared priorities as research institutions, as places. Like, it's the first time you've heard this, right? Because they want to somehow almost shame the SEC into like looking like a sham of college athletics, like making a farce of the whole thing. So there have been a lot of arrows that have been shot across the way. It does seem as though this is the alignment that we need to come up with, whether it's the East-West coalition or the Big Two, something, right? The 2014 mega conferences that become, it seems like this is, I don't want to say the beginning of the end, but the arms race has gotten so fierce, so fast, right? And when you add that to the NIL kind of escalated race that's coming almost, we can talk about NIL almost exclusively in football at this point, right? And maybe a little in basketball, a lot in football.
Yes and no. Those are the ones you hear about. But I tell you what, there are a lot of women with large social media followings that are doing just fine.
Absolutely. Right, that I agree as well. So you just wonder how long this can last. Now, granted, people said this in the 70s, like, hey, college football is going to, so, you would be silly to say the NCAA is going to end because of this, because you wouldn't be a student of history. But I will say something's going to change. Like you can't have like the Big 12 is feel like they might implode the whole thing just for the hell of it. Like, so this is not stable.
I don't know. There's a couple of things I disagree with. I think if you called this the beginning of the end, you would be wrong, because I think this is a heck of a lot closer to the end of the end than it is to the beginning of the end. And I do think this is a harbinger of the end of the NCAA.
Could it be the end of the beginning? That was the one we have not addressed.
Could it be the middle of the beginning's end?
No one ever says it's the middle. It's always the beginning of the end of the beginning. It's never the middle. No one's ever like, we're right. I think we're right in the apex. These are the salad days.
I think because of what you mentioned with NIL money and essentially college athletes just being able to profit as much as they can. And as we're learning, these high-end players in the SEC, right? The quarterback at Alabama, the people that are in these positions are going to be clearing millions of dollars, right? By the time their college careers are over, they will have banked millions of dollars. That eliminates the NCAA and the NCAA's rules from really having any effect on those people, right? Because what do you care as long as you can bank millions of dollars? And what do you care about whether you can get a history degree if you can also get hundreds of thousands of dollars, which then you can use to later buy yourself a history degree if that's truly something that you want? So
would you get it from your university, or would you get it from like the University of Phoenix so you don't have to go to class? I think you have to go that route.
Or, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of times, as you point out, the universities that play the best football do not necessarily confer the most valuable degrees. So maybe you want to get the best of both worlds, right?
Want to go to Dartmouth?
Which are all things that you can do with the money. And now that the money can flow directly to the athletes, what is the NCAA really doing, right? Because the SEC is powerful enough and has enough economic stature where they can afford to hire 20 people to form a governance committee and to set up their own rules that everyone agrees to play under. Like, this idea that you need a national body now almost doesn't exist, because the playing field is no longer level. If the kids that all go play for Alabama can each make $20 million a pop, then fine. Like, there's no level playing field anymore. It's all about what you can get and how you can get it. And I don't know why you need a national association anymore for that high level sport. I mean, I get its value in, field hockey and soccer and the other, the championship level sports, but in big time college football, right. In big time college football, there's enough resources there to set up your own structure.
Right. Just like no one worries about the marching band association, because no one cares. Like, they'll figure it out. They'll have their contests and so be it. Right. I hear what you're saying. There's a couple of things that have to get unpackaged there. First is, as a lot of sports have figured out, there is value in competitive balance, right? I think the NBA and the NFL have figured that out, that you can't have Wild West all the time because it doesn't work. Like, the reason the NFL works, parity does work. It really does. And I'm not saying whether this is fair to the athletes or not. I'm just saying that for college football to maintain some semblance, and I know the counter argument. I'm not going to do my part and your part. You're going to be like, yeah, but the same 4 teams go to the college football playoffs every year anyway, right?
Which actually wasn't going to be my counter argument. My counter argument was going to be that because of the way that the money is structured now, right? Which is that it isn't, which is just, hey, you can go and get whatever you get on your own. Because that's how it's structured, the fairness or the parity comes solely from the fans and boosters that want their team to succeed. So really now, instead of having one
not a great model,
it's a tough model. But when you look at something like college football, which I'd say without a doubt engenders more passion than any other sport in America. Yes. And when you have these sort of long established millionaires and billionaires that want nothing more than to spend their disposable income on making sure that their Saturdays are as good as they can be, I feel like that will create parity, right? If enough Vanderbilt alums want Vanderbilt to be good, they can now buy Vanderbilt's way into prominence.
We said this a long time ago. It is Harvard's time, my friends. It is Harvard's time. What if MIT and Caltech rise from the ashes? What if University of Chicago is like, you know what? We will have a football. It's been since the 1930s, but our time has come. And all the CEOs come out and they buy themselves great
team. Look at what T. Boone Pickens did at Oklahoma State.
Where did Bezos go to school?
I don't believe he went to school. Look at what T. Boone. I don't know. Look at what T. Boone Pickens did at Oklahoma State. when you couldn't just give money directly to the players, right? He turned Oklahoma State into an afterthought, a school that had hardly any college football success, into a legitimate top 10 contender year in and year out, just by giving money to the school to build facilities. So now imagine
Phil Knight in Oregon. Phil Knight in Oregon was not. Look, the power structure in the Pac-12 was always USC, UCLA. I mean, it was a Southern Cal kind of situation. It shifted up to, of all places, the place that seemingly no college football player would want to go, rural Oregon, right? And so 100%, that can and will happen. I just don't know, and whether this is, we're arguing semantics, because we're kind of arguing whether the NCAA will exist. And I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that, because that becomes kind of a process, like what's the best governance structure. But in terms of the stability of college football, this kind of Wild West, while it might be fun for Sportish, I do not think, because as much as Kent State fans love them some football, like I don't think those, Akron is the Zips. What is Kent? They're the Golden Flashes.
The Golden Flashes, yeah.
Can they?
But they were never part of the. They were never part of the conversation anyway. And
You're
as
right.
long as we're just talking about the SEC and Clemson and Florida State, like there will be parity there. You know, even your Kentuckys and your Vanderbilts, like there will end up being enough parity there.
But this will dismantle college basketball as well. It's not going to end with football.
Yes, correct. I
mean, because I'll tell you what, people in Kansas like them some basketball. Like there's money in Kansas, right? And so there will be, Georgetown will all of a sudden get good again, right? There's plenty of wealthy folks. Like this, there's money everywhere. And I guess that's part of your point. There's money everywhere. So how much is it worth to you? I don't know. I certainly do not begrudge the fact that college athletes are getting kind of compensated for their value. I'm not in love, as someone who kind of likes college athletics. I'm not in love with what this is likely to do to it. Maybe that's just too bad for me. And maybe I've just been kind of, living off the fat of the land for a long time, but I don't like what seems like, and I will say this is part of when to put a bow on this, because I know we got a lot of big stories to talk about. Hopefully there's been another couple commingling in Mississippi this time. But I think that was part of the warning shot that the alliance, the Pac-12, ACC, Big Ten, which is kind of a top U.S. News and World Report list, I suppose. I think they wanted to remind everyone that they think that academics are important, and this is not the NFL. And that was really, in some ways, that was the messaging of what they were saying. And so let's see, it may be tough if they completely dissociate the college athletics experience from the academic experience. I know that's what people have been talking about. I don't know how that works in practice.
Sure. And it's also preseason, and this stuff always gets talked about in August. And then come September, when the games start, it all falls by the wayside and everybody starts watching their teams again. And that's all they care about. Yep. And then your best players, Keith, are now playing for the right to get a pay cut to go play in the NFL.
That's
in a year's time, some of these players might be helping the Baltimore Ravens continue one of the greatest meaningless streaks in the history of sports, because Keith Strudler, the Baltimore Ravens, as of this airing of Sportish, have won 19 preseason games in a row. That equals the all-time record. The fact that this happened twice is mind-blowing. 19 consecutive preseason wins for the Baltimore Ravens. Their last loss in a game that matters but doesn't count was in 2015. This is as good of a meaningless streak as there has ever been in sports history, and I never want it to end.
There are generations of Baltimore Ravens fans who's never known what it's like to lose a preseason game. Do you think they're feeling the weight of the streak? When they get,
I hope
they
so.
have to. You can't not realize it. At some point, at what point did someone say, like, guys, we never lose these things? Like, do you notice that? We're always winning.
It's one of the most amazing things that I can ever recall happening in sports, because you're not actively trying to win preseason games. You're not putting your best players on the field. You have no idea who's even playing for your team half the time. You're like, we got that guy, get him in there.
It's like winning a coin flip. You made the point that this is different, and I didn't believe you at first. that it is actually more significant than winning, having that streak in actual football. Because in actual football, the Patriots were always going to be like Tom Brady's team had so much better. It was an 80-20 proposition every time they played. In preseason, when you're literally like, hey, that kid who played at Louisiana Tech, let's put him in at quarterback and see if he's any good for the last half. That's what you're dealing with. You have players that are not playing because they have a contract issue. You have players that said, I'm not playing till the game. Like, it's a complete freak show, right? And they've done it 19 straight times. So it is an amazing streak. Are there any, I've tried to think of this and I haven't come, are there other streaks that have happened in life that you think share that? I mean, I'm trying to think of what would be a meaningless streak that I could share with.
So was I. And like, sometimes you come down to like a consecutive free throw streak or something in basketball where someone, they make a ton in a row and, at some point they're going to miss it, but those points still count. Right. But then again, no one's ever like, hey, if we didn't get those free throws in the second quarter, we weren't going to win the game. But, like at least those are still like contributing to your team's success. And I mean, sometimes there are statistical anomalies like that where, if you shoot 80%, you're going to go on a heater where you shoot 100% over, a long stretch. But I couldn't think of one.
I'm trying to think if there was some kind of confluence of factors. By the way, the best thing that would ever happen is if they fired a coach after he went like 1-3 in the preseason. If they're like, look, we have a tradition of success here in Baltimore. We've won the preseason. How about this? How about if they gave out trophies for the preseason? Do you think that would change anything? No. So here's a good hypothetical. What would they have to do to make the teams want to win in the preseason? What would it take?
Make them regular season games.
But how much money? How much money would it take?
I don't think there's enough. These guys, you're already getting paid. Like, what do you say? Every preseason win, you double your salary. But then who's paying that? These games don't exist to win. They exist to play and evaluate. Like the fact that that's why this streak is so impressive, because the main goal of these games is not to win them. It's not. It's to put players in positions and try new things.
But there has to be something they're doing. They have to be playing their starters longer. They have to.
I think you saying that it's a coin flip is right, because I guarantee you they're not throwing Lamar Jackson out there for 40 snaps to keep this streak alive. Like, he's not.
He can't. He's got COVID all the time. There's no way. He can't play that long. If Lamar Jackson plays 4 consecutive games, like Lamar Jackson simply playing 19 consecutive games in this era would be the most heroic streak of all time. He's going to get COVID like 9 times for whatever it is. His body, like some people like seem to get bit by mosquitoes all the time. He has that body for COVID. He's had it twice. Bad.
While we lament the insanity of 19 consecutive preseason wins for the Baltimore Ravens, the team of August.
You don't want to play them in August. I'll tell you that much. You don't want to see them on your schedule.
Forbes has released their list of highest paid female athletes. And the top 2, I don't think are surprising. Naomi Osaka, $55 million a year, again, largely on the back of endorsements. Serena Williams, $35 million last year on the back of endorsements. Number 3 is Simone Biles, which I don't necessarily think is that surprising. Simone Biles. What I think is surprising, Simone Biles, $6 million, doesn't put her in the top 1,000 highest earning athletes in the world. So I think when you start to think about women's sports share of the marketplace, of the attention, I think this underscores it, right? The 3rd highest earning athlete that is a woman, a name that everyone has heard of, right? Who hasn't heard of Simone Biles? She's as famous as just about any athlete on the planet. Not in the top 1,000 in terms of worldwide annual earnings.
Now, these weren't just top 3 American. These were top 3 worldwide female athletes
in the world. Yeah, I mean, it's almost all tennis players. Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan were also on the list from the U.S. women's national soccer team. But for the most part, it's all women, because the WTA and the ATP pay equally. The prize money for men and women is equal.
Well, and so you have a couple challenges there. One is, and this always surprises me, every now and then there's an NBA contract like they announced, and I just kind of forgot how much money they get on regular contracts. Like,
it's unbelievable.
Because you're like, it used to be like, oh, they make all their money on endorsements. And then you realize someone just signed a multi-year contract paying like $50 million a year. And he's not even the best guy in the league. And you're like, oh my God, that era where it used to be like, oh, they get a few million on their contract and then they get lots of money on it. That era is over. They get big money on their contract, huge money. I mean, 50 million is a normal number in the NBA. It's a normal number. It's hard. Is that not hard to get your head around that an NBA player is making 50 in a year?
Well, there aren't many that are making 50 in a year. In fact, I don't know if there's any that are making 50 in a year. I don't know if Steph Curry got to that number, but they're in the 40s. Yeah. But I mean, what's more, I think, stunning is $6 million a year is a slightly above average Major League Baseball player. Like a guy filling out a rotation in the majors is making what Simone Biles is making in a year.
So, I mean, so you are, and that money's coming from endorsements. So what we realize is there is almost no money coming into women's professional team sports. Because I'm guessing if you look at the list on the men's side, it is littered with NBA, top NFL, and top MLB players, right?
Yeah. I mean, if it's national, it's soccer.
Soccer, of course.
Your Ronaldo and your Messi, and then
absolutely,
you get into your step. Well, and boxing. I mean, you look like Floyd Mayweather or Conor McGregor. They're going to be on the list.
Those are a relatively small number of those guys, but they're in there. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. But you have, if you go to you do your Premier Leagues and your top tier French, Spanish soccer teams, you go through those. You go through obviously your NBA is kind of the high water mark here in the US, plus some your quarterbacks and your top pitchers, I suppose. There's just no equivalent on the women's side. There's nothing even close. And if you look at what women's WNBA players make, it's really low. And then the reality on top of that is there is no one, because they don't have team sports that play regularly, that can pull in the same endorsement dollars. They just don't exist, which is why, I mean, look, let's bring this full circle because I know we're about to wrap up. It does suggest, and I know you said female athletes and female college athletes stand to do well on the NIL, not as well as the male athletes, because what they don't have, and they just won't have, is the giant machine of college football behind them. And I don't think the endorsement thing is going to be all that different. I understand there's a lot on social. There's not the machine that pushes big time college football is unlike anything that's created on the women's side. So I think you'll still see disparities. There might be more parity, but still big disparities.
Numbers to me point out that there is an investment opportunity in women's sports right now. And perhaps that will get taken advantage of. We shall see. If it does, we'll probably talk about it on an episode of Sportish, but not this episode. It'll have to be the next episode because we're out of time for this one. Thanks for hanging out with us. He's Keith. I'm Jeff. We are with you on For the Fans, FTFnext.com, YouTube, and whatever channels you like to get your podcast with on, as we like to say, Thursday at noon? I don't know. Yeah. You'll find it around that time in one of those places. You can set up like a text alert or something, and your phone will ring, and it'll be delightful. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Sportish. See you next time.